Good morning. Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. We'll be getting started in just a few minutes at the top of the hour. In the meantime, if you'd like to, you could answer our intro questions. They're completely anonymous. We're just curious about you folks as readers. All right, and I'm going to close this poll just shortly here. Want to make sure that we give some time to quick talk about the answers before we get started. Well, not answers, but what everyone had to say. Um, all right. Oh, cool. And I won't close it yet. I love seeing that there are still people answering those questions coming through. Okay. And I'm going to just end that now. And so it looks like we've got a lot of different interests here. We have people looking for ebooks, audiobooks, and magazines. Very cool. We've got a love for all of the genres I put down, including other. Now, these were the top checked out genres of 2021. That's how we decided on mystery, romance, biography, and thriller. But of course, we know there's so many other kinds of titles to love out there. That's why other was an option. We've got some great readers, and it looks like just about everyone's reading for fun, and some of you are reading for book club. So very cool. Thank you for indulging us in those questions. But now that we've hit that 10 o'clock mark, I'm going to get us started. Sorry. So good morning and welcome to our Learning Libby with the Experts webinar. This morning, we are excited to talk all about the library reading app Libby. We're going to start off with the basics, everything you need to know for your day-to-day life and enjoyment of Libby. We'll take a 5-minute break in the middle, give you a chance to stretch and test what you just learned with our mini quiz. And then we'll wrap up with our deep dive where we'll look at four of our favorite features. Apparently we have to throw in an extra one, Marissa, from the library reading app Libby. So we'll show you some of our favorite things. Those are kind of the cherry on top of the sundae, some things to enhance your experience, where the first part is more what you need to know. So before we dive into Libby, wanted to introduce ourselves. My name is Joe, and I'm here from OverDrive. You may have heard of OverDrive or even used our original OverDrive app in the past. We're also the makers of Libby, so we took feedback from the OverDrive app from people just like you and created Libby purely out of that feedback. So we wanted a fresh, new experience, and we believe that Libby provides that. So we are excited to introduce you to Libby today. At OverDrive, I'm a part of the digital bookmobile team. So we have a big old truck that we send across the US and Canada, introducing Libby to folks just like yourselves when we visit different libraries. I'm here with the other half of the bookmobile team.
Hi there, good morning. My name's Marissa. As Joe said, I'm the other half of the digital bookmobile team. But I always give Joe a hard time and joke around that he has the boring half of our job. So he typically hangs back in Cleveland, where OverDrive is headquartered, and does the desk work, which sounds like my nightmare. So instead, I travel with the digital bookmobile all over the US and Canada and help patrons learn how to use Libby. So in my 3 years at OverDrive, I've helped thousands of people learn Libby, whether it's the very basics like our first session or helping more experienced users learn tips and tricks like our second section. So we're really excited to be here today.
We are super excited to be here today. So glad to be getting to share Libby with all of you. Now, like Marissa said, sometimes I have to take care of the boring stuff. So I'm going to just quick get us all through the housekeeping here. First, we do have closed captions enabled for this webinar. They should already be popping up on your screen as subtitles right now. If you want to adjust those or turn them off, whatever you need to do, just look for the button that says CC in your Zoom meeting controls and tap on the little up arrow next to it, and you'll be able to make those adjustments for yourself. You can also ask Marissa and I questions throughout the entire webinar. We have chat and raise hand disabled, so they all go into one place. You can just use that Q&A box. If you type out your question, it will come through and one of us will answer it as soon as we can. Just keep in mind that these will be included in the recording, and you can also ask questions anonymously if that makes you more comfortable. Speaking of the recording, we are recording this session today, and we do that for a variety of reasons, but mainly it's so you have something to reference back to. We want to make sure you have access to everything we talk about. So whether you want to see something again, or if you need to hop off early for whatever reason, you can always reference that recording. You'll get an email tomorrow morning from Zoom that includes a link to the full recording of our webinar, as well as a link to our Getting Started with Libby PDF. Now that PDF will give short video clips for everything we cover in the basics portion, so just keep that in mind. Now, since we do have all of these great things you can reference back to, we just recommend that you watch us as we go through this basics portion and not try to follow along. You know, just kind of watch Marissa as she goes through everything, and then try out and download Libby when we hit that break period, knowing that, of course, you'll have these notes to get back to. Help us improve our webinar by filling out our survey. It'll pop up in your browser when the session ends. And then last, just in case, it doesn't happen to everyone, but sometimes when we connect our iPads into the webinar, Zoom shrinks the display. It only takes a few simple clicks to correct, but if it happens to you, just know that we've got the instructions going out in the chat. If you don't see them in the chat, just pose it as a question and we will give them as an answer there as well. All right, I think I got all the good stuff out of the way. I'm going to take a second here and get my iPad connected. Now, I mentioned Marissa and I are both using iPads today, but the Libby app can be downloaded on 2 different operating systems. So if you're using the Apple mobile operating system, so your typical iPhones and iPads, or if you're using the Android mobile operating system, that's your typical smartphones and tablets. There are so many Android brands, I could never list them all, but think like Samsung Galaxy or Google Pixel. You'll also be able to download Libby, the app there. Now, if you are someone who wants to use Libby on a computer, there's nothing to download. You just go to the website libbyapp.com and you can use Libby directly in your internet browser. Super simple. And what's even better is whether you're using Apple, Android, or libbyapp.com, everything is going to look exactly the same once we get into Libby. All right, I'm all connected now. So for those of you who are planning to download the app on an Apple or Android mobile device, you'll head into your App Store. It's that blue App Store icon for Apple, the Google Play Store for Android. And once you're in, just tap on your search bar because we're just going to type in Libby, L-I-B-B-Y. And then I tend to ignore search results and just hit search or enter in my keyboard, because when I do this, Libby is going to be one of the top results that pops up. So we can see right up here at the top, Libby by OverDrive. We've got this maroon app icon with Libby reading her book. Now, next to that on the screen, you'll see either get or install. And you'll just tap on get or install to get the free Libby app on your device. So once you tap that, Libby will download. And as I mentioned, Libby is completely free to download and use. So once the app's all downloaded, we'll leave the App Store and head over and open that freshly downloaded Libby app on our device. Now, when we open Libby for the very first time, she'll have a few questions for us to help us find our library and get signed in with our library card. So we can see we've got that first question here, and we only have to do these steps when we sign into our device for the very first time. So let's dive in with, do you have a library card? I'll say yes. And then I am just going to need to find my library location. So a couple options pop up here on the screen. When you're setting up your first device, I recommend using Search for a Library. It's nice and precise. It's going to help you find your library. We're going to do this in just a moment. I wanted to point out copy from another device though. So if you're like me and you like to use a few different devices with Libby, like a smartphone and a tablet, you'll get one device all set up first with Search for a Library. And then when you're setting up that second or third or however many, you can use copy from another device, and that will pull all of your info in from your first device nice and quick. So keep that in your back pocket. For now, we're going to go with Search for a Library. And I'm just going to type in my zip code. I guess I should say your zip code. I'm in Cleveland. There we go. And so today we are virtually visiting the Falmouth Public Library. You might see the address appear here underneath, but what's most important, what you're really looking for, is this name up at the top. You are part of the CLAMS digital collection. So your virtual library, your digital library is called CLAMS. So I'll tap on this box to choose it. And then we're almost done with this portion. We just need to hit sign in with my card. And then we'll confirm that we are CLAMS library patrons. This is where we're from. Marissa will talk about partner libraries later. And now we'll just type in our card number. This is, a number usually found under a barcode. Enter the numbers only, no dashes or spaces. And then once that's in, we'll tap on next. And then we'll just pop in our PIN. Now, if you don't know your PIN number, or if you have any trouble during these sign-in steps with your library card info, just reach out to your friendly neighborhood librarians. I forgot a number. That's the problem I was having. See, it even happens to the experts. Now, if my card didn't work, I'd call my library. They'd be the ones to help me. But since I made the mistake there, I forgot the second 8 in my card number. There we go. Now my card has appeared here on the screen, and I see I can borrow up to 5 ebooks and audiobooks at a time, and I can place a hold on up to 15. We'll tap on next, and just like that, we are all set, and we have access to our library's complete collection of ebooks, audiobooks, and magazines. So that wraps up the download and sign-in process. This is where I get to hand things over to Marissa. She is going to take us through the basics. Once again, everything you need to know. Marissa is using a demo library from OverDrive this morning, so you are going to see a different logo on her screen and some different titles here and there, but everything functions exactly the same. Marissa, I'll hand it over to you, and if y'all have any questions, I'll be hanging out in the Q&A.
All right, thank you, Joe. So before I go ahead and get started, I want to give that final reminder about the zoom ratio, because this is where it really matters most. You definitely need to see my full screen, in particular, the navigation bar at the bottom of my screen. So you should see a bar across the bottom. It has 5 icons within it: search, library, menu, shelf, and timeline. So if you're not seeing that, then Joe is putting out instructions one more time in the Zoom chat feature, and you can follow those to fix your zoom ratio. Like he said, it's a couple of clicks. And if at any point you can't find those instructions, just go into the Q&A and ask Joe, and he'll hook you up there as well. So I will be talking about all of the icons that are within that navigation bar at some point in the presentation. But we are going to start out with the library icon. That is the second icon that you see within that navigation bar. It looks like a little library building, and it says library underneath. And that icon is what you're going to tap on when you want to browse your library's entire collection of ebooks, audiobooks, and magazines. Now, you're going to hear me say browse when I talk about the library roughly 1,000 times. And I repeat it so much because it's a lot like when you are on that library icon. It's a lot like if you were at the library, the physical location, and you walk in not knowing exactly what you want to read, and you just browse the shelves and see if something piques your interest. So as we browse around that library here, up at the top of the page, we have some filters. And these filters are a really great place to start browsing. You could tap on Just Added if you wanted to see a list of titles that were recently purchased by the library. They're new to the collection. Available Now is a really great place to start when you want to read something right away. When you tap into Available Now, you're not going to find any books that have wait lists. They're all available to borrow. So if you're in a rush and want to borrow something fast, that is the place to go. And then we have subjects. This is probably the most popular way to browse around the library. We saw in the entry poll, we had a little bit of everything. We love biographies and mysteries and romance. So if you like to stick to a certain subject, or you just want to browse by a certain subject, you can tap into subjects, choose which subject you'd like to look at, and then browse the books that fall into that category. So those filters, a really great place to start browsing, but you can also scroll down on this library page and you'll come across a section that is labeled Guides. Now, guides are different from library to library, so yours aren't going to look exactly like mine do here. Each library gets to choose these. Your guides are kids and teens. That's where you can go to find curated lists of content geared towards juvenile or young adults. You also have magazines, Available Now, and sponsored content. So magazines are going to be the easiest way you can browse around all the magazines that your library has. And then those other two guides are helpful as well. Guides just point you in the direction of certain content based on a specific criteria that the library chooses, whether it's age or format or anything like that. So those guides can also be a good place to browse around. Now, as we continue down the page, this is where you're going to find general curated collections that the library puts together for you. Never judge a book by its movie. So these are going to be all books that have a film or TV adaptation. Now, these curated collections that you're going to see on the library page are going to rotate throughout the year. It's a lot like at the physical library, when in the summer you see an end cap that's displaying beach reads, and then you go back in the winter and that end cap has switched over to cozy mysteries or holiday recipe guides. So you'll always find something fresh and new, a new category to browse, because the library is always going to be rotating these collections here. Now, I'm going to repeat myself. I know you'll get tired of it, but it really does help. We browse at the library. We don't know exactly what we're looking for here. We're either popping into those filters or checking out the guides or browsing those curated collections that the library puts together for us. In the instances where you do know exactly what you're looking for, maybe you want to search by a specific author. Maybe you have a title in mind, or you want to look for a magazine or a series. That's when you can tap on the first icon instead. It's that little magnifying glass. And this is where you can search for something specific. SSS, search for something specific. Like I said, whether it's a title, an author, magazine, or series name, you can do any of those. I'm going to type in the plot. That's the title of the book that I'm going to look for here with you. Just like Joe, I skip over the search suggestions and go right to that search button or enter in my device's keyboard, because 99% of the time, the book you're looking for, if the library owns it, is going to pop up right at the top. So we can see here, this is my search results. This is also what it's going to look like if you pop into any of those filters or a list. You'll see all these books here. And I want to point out two different things that you should be aware of when you're looking for books. The first is going to be how you can tell the difference between an ebook and an audiobook. So it's important to know that libraries actually purchase those formats separately. They purchase ebooks and they purchase audiobooks. And that means you can't borrow an audiobook and then switch it on over into an ebook or vice versa. You have to borrow it in the format that you'd like to enjoy it in. So when you're looking for an audiobook, we've got a square jacket cover, kind of looks like a CD case. And then right underneath, you'll see a set of headphones and then the duration or how long that book is going to be. Those are the three visual indicators to know that's a book that you listen to. If you'd like to read a book instead, we have the rectangular jacket cover. So more closely shaped like a book, like a physical book would be. So that is going to be a book that you read instead of listen to. The other thing I want to point out here is how to tell the difference between books that are available to borrow right away or books that you'll have to join a waiting list for. So the audiobook version here of the plot, you can see that it says place hold right next to that jacket cover. So that means there is currently someone reading every copy that the library owns. And joining the waiting list is really easy. All you have to do is tap on place hold. Libby will even give you a rough estimate of how long that title will take to get to you. And then you can tap on that big maroon button that says place hold to confirm. Now that we've confirmed that we've placed a hold on the plot, Libby's giving us a few options for what to do next. Generally, if I'm placing holds, that means I haven't found the book that I want to read right now. So I'm going to go ahead and tap on keep browsing. And this will take you right back to the same list that you were looking at. So we can see I'm back in my search results here, and the audiobook version is now on my hold shelf. If a title is available to borrow, you'll see borrow next to that jacket cover instead. You could tap on borrow here if you would like to, if you already know you want to borrow this book, but let's pretend that you don't know what this book is about yet. You can tap on the jacket cover itself, and that will take you to the details page. So you'll get to find out what that book is about first, and then if you decide that it does sound good and you want to borrow it, there's a borrow button on this screen as well. So I'll go ahead and tap borrow here. Now, up at the top of our confirmation page, you can see we're borrowing the plot for 14 days. 14 days is the default lending period at your library. But you can tap on this 14-day button here and switch your lending period over to 21 days if you'd rather have it a little bit longer. And that will then become your default lending period moving forward for that format. So you'll need to do that once for eBooks, once for audiobooks, and then magazines. And then moving forward, Libby's going to remember that you like those formats for the lending period that you chose. So now that I've switched my lending period, I'm going to go ahead and confirm that I want to borrow this book. Right underneath there, that big maroon button again. And this is where Libby's going to start downloading the title for offline use. We can see it downloading here on the left. Libby does this automatically when you're connected to Wi-Fi. And as soon as you get that little library card with the check mark on it, that's when you know your book is fully downloaded for offline use. So you can take it anywhere you want, whether it's up in an airplane on airplane mode or out in the woods without any cell service. And Libby is going to still allow you to access and enjoy your book. Now I'm going to go ahead and tap on Open Book. And this is where Libby's asking, do I want to read my ebook in Libby or on a Kindle device? If you have a Kindle that you prefer to read on, a Kindle Paperwhite, for example, you can choose Kindle here at this step. Libby will prompt you to sign into your Amazon account to finish getting the library book. So I don't do this live because it requires me to sign into my Amazon account, but I do want you to know that in the PDF you'll receive tomorrow, I have a 30-second video that shows you the exact steps. It's really, really easy, and you'll be able to see that process there in that video if you need to. But here live, I am going to go ahead and open this book up in Libby and show you a few of the key reading features in the Libby app. When you first open a book, you're going to have menus up at the top and the bottom of the screen. Libby's counting my pages now, but we will see our reading progress right here. So I'm on page 1 of 384. And when you are ready to begin reading the book and you want those menus out of the way, it's just a quick tap of the finger or click with your mouse in the center of the screen, and then Libby's going to drop those out of the way. Then we can click or tap or swipe to start paging forward. That's going to be on the right side of the screen, and I'm moving quickly just so we can get in a big chunk of text there. One of the benefits of reading digitally is that we can make our books customized to our own individual needs. So I want to show you how to do that because I like my large print font now that my eyes are getting worse with age. So what I'm going to do is tap in the center of the screen, just a quick tap. That brings those menus back up. And then up in the top right-hand corner, we see that A icon. That A stands for appearance. So anytime you want to change that reading appearance, you can tap on that A. And within our appearance menu, we have 3 different things we can change. The first is the text scale. So this is going to be the size of the font. We can increase or decrease the font size here. Next, we have lighting. So I am currently in bright mode. That's Libby's default, but there's sepia, and then this dark mode is really nice for reading at night. Maybe don't want that bright screen in your eyes. And then lastly, we have book design. This is the font style that Libby is putting the book into. So I want to point out the open dyslexic font style here, because it may help some users with dyslexia while reading. So 3 different ways you can customize your reading appearance. That's the size of the font, the background color of the page, and then your font style. And what's great about these settings is that they are sticky. So Libby remembers them moving forward. You only have to change them once, and then Libby will deliver your ebooks to you on that device with those settings already in place. So that is how you can change your reading appearance settings. I'm going to drop that menu out of the way, just tapping right above the menu, and it disappeared. And now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to leave this ebook and we'll pop into an audiobook. So I'm going to tap on the center of the screen to bring my menus back up. And then you'll see the back button up in that top right or left-hand corner rather. So that back button is how we leave all 3 eBooks, audiobooks, and magazines. It'll always be right up in that top left-hand corner. And that has taken us over to the shelf. So I'm going to give everyone a minute here. I'm going to take a drink of water so I don't get dry by the end of this. And once I start back up again, we're going to reorient down in that navigation bar. So just a moment here. Okay. So the first thing I want to talk about down at the bottom of the screen is this bar that you see on the right-hand side. This is Libby's Now Reading bar. So anytime you see it, it's the last book that you had open in the Libby app. You can tap on that bar and it's going to open your book right back up to the last spot you were at. I'm going to dismiss that for now so we can see the full navigation bar. And let's just review what we've covered already. So first, we tapped on the library icon and we browse the library's entire collection of eBooks, audiobooks, and magazines. We had the filters up at the top, we had the guides, and then we had the curated collections that the library rotates throughout the year. So we browsed at the library, then we went and searched for something specific with the magnifying glass. So this is where we could type in a title, an author, a magazine or series name, and we'll be able to find that specific author title or name. I'm now over on the shelf. That's the fourth icon that you see in the navigation bar. Looks like a little stack of books there, and it says shelf underneath. And the shelf is what you're going to tap on when you want to find your current loans and holds. So these are going to be books you're actively in your lending period with in Libby, or you're actively on the waiting list, waiting your turn to borrow the book. So up at the top of the shelf, we have loans and holds if you want to use those filters to specifically look at either of those. Tags are something we talk about in the deep dive. But here on the main page of the shelf, these are going to be your loans listed by the last time you opened them. So the first book that we're seeing is the book I just borrowed with you earlier. And as I scroll down, I can see some other books that I've borrowed and started reading earlier in the week. I'm going to open up that audiobook, those headphones we see there, and I'm going to talk about some of the audiobook goodies here. You're going to find your reading progress up at the top of the player. So I'm 1% of the way through, nearly 5 minutes in with 6 hours left to go. And then the player is going to be down here at the bottom. So I can tap on play, start that narrator up. Now I can hear him. You should just be able to hear me instead. But one thing that I really prioritize mentioning here in the webinars is that when you are done listening to an audiobook, you come back into the app and tap on pause. So Libby is designed to play audiobooks in the background of your device. And what that means is you can minimize the Libby app and start online shopping, or you could put your screen to sleep and start gardening or doing dishes. And Libby will allow you to continue listening to your audiobook while you multitask. So with that in mind, I want you to remember to open the Libby app back up when you're done listening and tap on pause so that narrator stops talking and you don't lose your place. There were a couple times on the bookmobile I just saw people turn their volume down and they're like, well, I'm good to go because I can't hear it, but that audiobook would continue to play. So always remember to come in and tap on pause, stop that narrator, and then you won't have to worry about finding your place later. Okay, so I'm going to come back up. Remember, back is how we leave our books here. So I'm going to tap on back, and that takes me back over to the shelf again. And I'm going to reorient everyone again here. So we see that my now reading bar is showing me the audiobook I just opened. And that's because it's always the last book that you open in the Libby app for easy access. I'm going to dismiss that again. I said your shelf is your current loans and your current hold. So you're actively in your lending period or on the wait list. Right next door, you'll see the timeline. That's the little clock icon, the last icon within our navigation bar. And this is all of your history. So this is going to show you every loan you've ever had, hold, return, and renewal as well. So I want to make sure you understand the difference here. Your shelf is current. You have that bookshelf. You can pull the book off the shelf because you're in your lending period and read it. Your timeline is your history. It's going to be everything you've ever done in the Libby app. We're going to talk about the last icon now. That is the menu in the very center of that navigation bar. Your menu, you can think of as your, your account settings. So this is where you can manage your libraries and find help and support. Up at the very top of the menu is where you're going to find any of your in-app notifications. So Libby here is letting me know that a new issue of a magazine has been added to my library. Thanks for the notification, Libby. I'm going to go ahead and dismiss this by swiping it. You can see I'm swiping it to the left and it dropped off the screen. And now Libby is letting me know I can manage my notifications. I'm going to pop into here, but I want you to know that Libby is going to prompt you to manage your notifications the very first time you place a hold. So she's actually going to bring this menu to you instead of you having to come and find it. But I want to talk about what that's going to look like here. So notifications are how you get alerted about important events in the Libby app. By default, everyone is set to this blue notification option here. This is a push notification, and push notifications appear on your device's screen regardless of what app you have open. So you could be browsing Facebook, reading the news, online shopping, and Libby's going to give you that notification just like a text message would appear on your screen. You can switch that over into a menu badge if you'd like. That is an in-app notification. And I just showed you what that looks like. It's that box that appeared and I swiped it to the left. So that is only going to appear inside the Libby app. And if you open Libby every day, that is a good option for you. Also, you can ignore a notification if you're not interested in that particular event. Right underneath the ways you can be notified, you see all of the things you can be notified about. And I'm gonna climb up on a hill and harp about this hold ready notification here. I really recommend that you keep that set to the blue push notification option. And the reason I recommend that is because when it's your turn on a waiting list, Libby's going to give you 3 days to take action on that book. In that 3 days, that book's sitting in limbo, and you're the only person who can take action on it. The actions you can take are to borrow the book, to cancel the hold, or to have the hold delivered later. So if you're not ready for the book yet, but you want to keep your place in line, you can deliver the title later and come back to it when you're ready. Now, if you do not either borrow, cancel, or deliver the book later, Libby will one time as a courtesy deliver it later after 7 days. You'll get a second 3-day limbo period to take action. And if that second time around you don't take action again, that's when Libby cancels your hold. So you'll be taken off the wait list entirely. You'll have to go and find that book again. So I say I climb up on that hill because it really is a day ruiner for me if I've waited 6 weeks for a book and then I forget to take action and I have to come back and wait another 6 weeks. So that's why I do recommend your notification is set to that push notification option. So that notification appears on your device's screen no matter what. Okay, I'm going to climb back down and we're going to tap on back up here in the left. This is going to take us back to the main menu. And I want to talk about library cards and digital collections here. This is very important for you in Massachusetts, because with your single library card, you can sign into 8 total digital collections. This is unlike most states. You're very lucky. Joe and I are wildly jealous of Massachusetts residents, because when you add all of those digital collections, you can pop between all of those libraries, and some have books that others don't. Some have shorter waiting lists. So it really gives you a nice way to read books that you want to faster. So you can add as many of those libraries as you'd like. What you can do when you are ready to add those additional digital collections is tap on Add Library here. And then up here where it says library name, city, or zip, you could still put in your zip code. I like to just type in the state name, actually. Massachusetts. And then other than the Teachers Association, unless you're a part of the Teachers Association, all of the other libraries that are listed in this list are collections that you have access to with your library card. So at the top is our collection, right? Or today, I'm saying ours because I'm pretending to be with you. We'll start at the next library in the list, that collection, so Noble. So I'm going to just make my way down the list. I'll tap on Noble. Once we are in Noble's collection, we're going to tap on Sign In with my card. And Joe did allude to those partner libraries earlier when he first signed in. So we're going to come down to partner libraries because we're from CLAMS. And we'll find CLAMS here in this list. You can tap on 15 more if you don't see CLAMS come up right then and there. So I'm going to tap on CLAMS. And then here is where we're going to type in our library card number again. And we'll hit next and then go. And since I didn't type in my library card, it's not going to do it, but it will appear in this list. So I would see both my demo libraries, then I would see CLAMS and Noble following that. So just keep doing that. You're going to have to do it 7 times the very first time you do it, but then you'll be good to go. And if you set up another device, Joe talked about that copy from another device code, and that will just bring all of your library cards over to that second device with a simple 8-digit code instead of having to do that over and over and over again. So that is how you can add those different collections there. We're going to finish off our getting started session underneath help and support here. So the first thing I want to talk about is within the settings. I'm just going to tap on settings here. This is where you can find that 8-digit code on your device that's already set up. I also wanted to point out here you can find some accessibility features as well. But I'm going to scroll down here until I find customize navigation. And I want to pop in here to show you how you can turn on your labeled icons. So throughout our presentation, I've been alluding to all of our icons. They all say little labels underneath those. By default, Libby has these turned off. So they're just going to be the icons instead of having those labels underneath. I really recommend coming in here when you're first getting started using the app to come in and toggle those labeled icons on. I do have in that PDF another 30-second video showing you how to do this. So if you're like, I got all the other information she said, but I really need to remember how to turn on those labeled icons, you could watch that video instead of having to find the spot here in the recording. Now that my icons are labeled, I'm going to come back I'm going to tap it one more time because that took me to settings. Now I want to go back to the menu and we'll talk about getting some help. So for getting help, you have Joe and I for about the next 45 minutes. You also can always go to your local library. They are very helpful as well. But if you want to find help and support directly in the Libby app, you'll come under help and support, tap on get some help, and there are two ways to find it. The first is going to be asking Libby, who's a computer, right? She's our digital librarian. And here in this how can we help box, you can type in a full question or a keyword. And Libby's going to search the help site and bring articles from the help site over into the app. So let's pretend I finished a book early. I know my books return on the due date automatically, but I want to get it to the next person in line since I finished early. I'm going to type in return and tap on search. And here we can see Libby's brought me some help articles. Returning books is the most relevant one, so I'm going to tap on that. And here are the instructions for how to return a title early if I finish it before my due date and I want to get it, back in circulation. If you have a trickier question or maybe you need some troubleshooting steps because you've run into a problem, you can always come down here where it says ask our support team. And this will connect you with OverDrive technical support specialists. They are living and breathing, unlike Libby, and they are a really good, friendly bunch of folks, I promise. And there you can email with them with a problem, a question, or an idea for the app, and they will email you back with the answer or some troubleshooting steps as well. So those are the two ways you can find help and support, either asking Libby or asking our technical support team. And that wraps up all of the features that you need to know to get started with the Libby app. I'm going to hand things back over to Joe, and he's going to get us into some next steps.
Thanks, Marissa. Hopefully you can give your voice a bit of a break before we go into our deep dive. So everyone, we are now headed into our 5-minute break period. That will start now. Feel free to be back at 10 till. So be back at 10:50. Just remember, you can use this time to ask us questions. You can even test your knowledge of what you learned. I'm going to do a mini quiz while we break, give everyone a chance to see what they learned. And then at 10:50, we're going to head into our deep dive. So once again, make sure you're back around 10:50. I usually start a minute or two late. So, you got that little bonus there. We only recommend sticking around for the deep dive if you're feeling confident and ready to learn more. We don't want anyone to leave feeling overwhelmed. So just remember, we are recording. If you'd like to hop off after we finish our mini quiz, no problem. Remember, you'll get that info tomorrow and you can pick up wherever you left off. All right, so everyone, please be back in about 5 minutes. If you are walking away to get more coffee, water, whatever you like. But for now, while we wait, I'm just gonna do our mini quiz. So the questions will appear on your screen automatically. They are completely anonymous. Just give it your best answer. If you don't know, we still want you to participate. You could either guess or, of course, choose unsure. Question number 1 in the navigation bar, what do you tap to browse your library's collection? Browse is the keyword. Do you tap the magnifying glass, the library, the menu, the stack of books, or the clock? This is when we don't know specifically what we want. We're just kind of browsing around. And I'll close this in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. So when we are looking for something new, we don't know exactly what we want. We just kind of want to stumble upon our next great read. Just like when we're hunting around in the physical library, we're going to actually tap on that building icon, that library building. When we do this, this takes us to our library's digital collection page. We can use the filters up at the top to help refine our search. We could dive into one of the guides our library has created, or we could hop into any of these different curated lists, which are just recommended titles created pretty much the same way that librarians create the physical displays in the actual library. Now, when you know exactly what you want, that's when you go to that magnifying glass. This is our specific search. So type in a title, author, series name, magazine name, and that'll take you right to it. Question number 2. Here we go. We'll still be in the navigation bar. What do you tap to find your current loans and holds? So same answers as before: magnifying glass, library, menu, stack of books, or clock. Where do those current loans and holds live? And I'll close this one in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, so your current loans and holds can be found on your shelf. To get there, we'll just tap on that stack of books. Just like around most of our houses, we probably got stacks of book to read. When you get there, you can use filters up at the top if you want to dive into your holds, or if you scroll through this main shelf page, you'll see all of the books you're currently borrowing from most recently borrowed to the oldest. Let's see if we can sneak in one more question here. Let's dive into an ebook. So what are the 3 ways you can customize your ebook's appearance? Select all that apply. You can change the text scale or the size of the font, the lighting or the background color of the page, the book design or the font the book is written in, or language, the language the book is written in. And I'll close this one in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, so we got a couple of you with our trick question there. So the 3 things you can customize in your ebook's appearance. First, let's dive in. So we'll tap in the center of the screen and tap on the appearance icon. This will open our menu. First thing we can change, we can make the font as large or as small as we like. Next, we can change that background color. So bright is the default, but you'll find what works best for your eyes. And then last, we can change the font the book is written in. So we've got 5 pre-made fonts here, but there's also a custom option that you can really dive in and change around to see things the way you'd like to see them. So the 3 correct answers were you can change the text scale, the lighting, and the book design. But if you answered language, that is a good answer. Your library does offer titles in a variety of different languages. But just like how you have to decide if you want an ebook or an audiobook and you can't change it once you have the format you picked, same thing with language. If you want a title in German, you'll have to go find that book in German instead of changing it once you borrowed the English version. Marissa's got a great tip for us in our deep dive where she will show us how we can set some preferences to find the books we like, not only as fast as possible, but also in the languages we like to read them in. And with that, that wraps up our mini quiz. Thank you all for indulging me in that little break there. Now, we are at the halfway point, so to speak. I mean, it's not an even halfway, but we're at the second half of our presentation now. This is the last call I promised. If you are kind of deciding if you want to hop off, we don't want anyone to feel overwhelmed, of course. So if you're at your max capacity, you can tap leave in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen to exit the webinar. You'll get that email tomorrow morning with the link to the full recording. Thank you so much for joining us. If you are hopping off now, we do appreciate you taking the time to learn the basics with us. Now, for those of you who are sticking around for the deep dive, just want to give you the 2 quick reminders. Once again, closed captions are enabled. You should be seeing them on your screen automatically. If you'd like to adjust them, just look for the button that says CC in your Zoom meeting controls and tap the little up arrow next to it to adjust your settings. You can ask us questions, keep asking them. We've had a lot of great ones come through the Q&A so far already. Send that through. You can choose to ask questions anonymously if that makes you more comfortable. This session will work a little differently. Some questions I'll continue to answer in the background, but we'll also set aside some time at the end where Marissa and I will show off the answers to those questions live directly within the webinar. I've already got a couple that I'm looking forward to showing y'all how to do. All right, so the 4 things we are going to give you tips and tricks on today. We're first going to jump into magazines, what makes them special, and some ways you can navigate through them. Then we'll look at filtering and refining lists, like I mentioned, to help you find those books you like faster and set those preferences. Then we'll dive into probably our favorite tip of them all, tags, what they are, how we use them, some ways you can enjoy them as well. And then we'll wrap up with making and exporting notes and highlights. Great for those of you who said you were in book club, or if you just like to make notes in your books. Now I'm going to hand it back over to Marissa. She's probably going to dive right in for us today with our first tip and trick. Remember, if you have any questions, I'll be hanging out in the Q&A. And thank you all for joining us.
All right, thank you, Joe. So as I get connected here, first, I want to talk about what makes magazines special for our very first tip. So we talked about at the very beginning of the Getting Started session that you can borrow up to 5 ebooks and audiobooks and place a hold on up to 15. Now, magazines are not included in that because they are always available. So you never have to place a hold. And everyone can read them at once, and everyone can read as many as they'd like. So you're not going to be limited to how many magazines you can borrow like you are ebooks and audiobooks. So those are the 2 things that make magazines special. Always available, and they do not count against your loan limit. We did talk already about how to find magazines. You can either go to the library icon and check out the magazine guide, or you can search for a specific magazine by going to that search icon. So I'm going to jump right into a magazine here. I'm going to open up this issue of Popular Mechanics. And you'll notice I have those menus up at the top and the bottom. This lower menu in the magazine does also give you the thumbnails for each of the pages. So this is one of the first ways that you can navigate throughout the magazine. You can tap on any of these pages and jump right on over to that. I typically see younger kids with great vision doing this. I have started not being able to see those as well. And so if you can't see those very well either, that's okay. I'm going to show you a couple different ways to navigate throughout. But I like to mention that that is an option there for you. I'm going to tap in the center of the screen to drop those menus out of the way. And then the second way to navigate, we've learned in eBooks, we can tap or swipe to page forward on that right side of the screen. The third way to navigate is going to be using the table of contents. So I've made my way over to the table of contents, and I see all of the articles that are in the magazine listed here. We can tap on any of these articles to jump right on over to it. I'm going to jump into this article on how to build a backyard chicken coop. I'm going to tap on it, and Libby has taken me over to page 52. This is something I desperately wish I could do, but my city doesn't allow chicken coops in city limits. I think it's a travesty. So now that I'm looking at this article, this is what I call the traditional magazine view. So If you're on a larger device like a computer or an iPad Pro, then those are going to be probably big enough screens that you'll be able to read this traditional view without any issue. But I'm on an iPad mini, so it's a smaller screen. And so I need a bigger font than this. And I need to clear my throat, so one moment. There we go. Didn't want to do that in your ears. So down at the bottom of the screen, we have this circle icon with a little page inside. And this is the article view. So I'm going to tap on that icon. And the article is coming up in a new menu. It includes both the text and pictures, so you're not going to lose anything by going into this view. And what's great about the article view is that you can customize your reading appearance. So again, we talked about that in our Getting Started session. That A icon is what you can tap on to change the appearance. So if you want to make your text bigger or change the background color, you can certainly do that in the article view of a magazine. If you have already adjusted those reading appearance settings in your ebook and then you borrow a magazine, Libby's going to remember those settings from your ebook. So Libby's already knowing this is the size of the font that I like. Now, over on the left side here at the bottom, we have arrows pointing forward and backward. And we also have a table of contents. So this is the last way that you can navigate throughout the magazine. If you want to stay in the article view, instead of closing this menu, turning the page, opening the menu back up, what you can do is press forward with that finger pointing. That's going to make you allow you to move forward in the magazine. Backwards going to do back, back, back. And then in the center, that table of contents is going to allow you to choose which article in the entire magazine. So maybe I wanted to jump back to the beginning and read this article about the wheel. I'll tap on that. And Libby's taken me, way earlier in the magazine than I was previously. Now, again, I am still in that article view, so I have that enlarged font. When you are finished reading your magazine and you're inside the article view, what you'll have to do is tap on Done down in the bottom right-hand corner. That's going to take you back to the traditional view. And then you can tap on the center of the screen here, and you'll have that back button that I talked about earlier in both our eBooks and our audiobooks. That's how you can leave the magazine as well. So that was tip number one, what makes magazines special, and then a couple different ways that you can navigate throughout the magazine experience. I'm now going to move on to tip number two, and this is all about finding the books that you like faster. So we talked generally, you browse at the library, you search for something specific with the magnifying glass, but now I want to talk about how you can filter and refine a list so that you can find books way, way faster. So I'm going to jump into this available now filter on our library page. I can see 81,000 titles are in this list. I could be looking all day for a book, and sometimes that is how I like to pass the time, but let's pretend right now I am in a hurry. So the first thing I want to show you is setting a preference. That's going to be on the left-hand side here. We can see that preferences button. Preferences are filters that are saved to Libby. And I mean saved because once you set your preferences, it doesn't matter how many times you open and close the app or how long you take in between opening the app, Libby is going to remember your preferences and apply those filters to all of your searching and browsing moving forward. So let's talk about a few instances and why you would want to do that. The most common that I see out on the digital bookmobile is language. So this is one I set on my personal Libby account as well. I only speak English, much to my high school French teacher's dismay. And so I have an English preference set in Libby so that I know every time I search and browse for a book, I'm only seeing titles written in English. I'm not going to come across a French version or a Japanese version. I'll be good to go and know that I can read that book. Format is also very popular. So if you're someone who, you are an avid audiobook reader, you could select audiobooks. I need to clear my throat again. I apologize. Once we hit that hour mark is when I start to feel it. So if you're an avid audiobook listener and you're not interested in reading books or magazines, you can set an audiobook preference and you'll only see audiobooks when you search and browse. And you can do that for any of the formats there. I like them both, so I'll stick with that. Okay, struggling here. So the last one is audience. Right now, I can see everything. Joe, I'm gonna have you speak for a second because I can't catch my breath.
Just messaging you. You're good. All right. So the last one that we typically see on the road is an audience filter. So if you're setting up a device to hand over to a kiddo, you might set a juvenile or a young adult preference. This way, they're not going to see content like 50 Shades of Grey when they're scrolling through. They'll just see things that are in their age range. We're going to leave this one set to all, though, because, of course, for our purposes, we want to see all content. And so that was our last one we're going to talk about. We're going to apply the English preference now. Depending on the size of your device, you might have to scroll down a little bit, but just hit the button that says Apply Preferences. And now you can see we've got that number 1 next to the button that says Preferences. So we've got that English preference. It is going to stick and stay no matter a day, a week, a month, or a year from now. No matter how many times we open or close Libby, that preference is going to stay for us until we go back in there and change it if we wanted to. So a great benefit, and now you're guaranteed that you won't accidentally borrow a title in Japanese, German, whatever, so you can make sure you're always able to understand your books.
Thank you, Joe.
Of course. Do you need more time?
No, I'm good. I'm good. When I was clearing my throat and I took a drink of water, it went down the wrong way. So I'm good to go now. I apologize. Okay, so preferences, like Joe said, stick and stay. Those are saved. Now we're going to talk about temporary filters. So these are going to be filters that revert back to the default the next time you search or browse. So for this, I'm going to give a little bit of a prompt. So let's pretend my mom and I are going to go on a road trip and I need an audiobook to listen to on my way. So we need the audiobook format. My mom loves mystery historical fiction. So those are the subjects we're going to refine by. And then she's an avid reader. So I'm going to look for a new release because it's unlikely she's gotten to it yet. So what I'm going to do is come over on the right side and tap on refine. And the first thing we'll change is the format. In this particular scenario, I want an audiobook, even though I like all 3 formats generally. So I'll choose audiobook. I already see my number dropping to 22,000. Now I'm going to add my subject filters. So I'm going to go to subject and then mystery. And we see that numbers drop to 2,900. However, My mom doesn't just like mysteries. She likes mystery historical fiction. So I'm going to come back to subject and tap on historical fiction. And we're going from 2,900 down to 222. Now you might be thinking, why did that number decrease instead of increase if we added a second subject? And that's because when you add additional subjects, you are combining them. So I'm not looking at a list of historical fiction and mystery. I'm looking at a list of mysteries that are also historical fictions. So you can find niche subjects. That's why I like to point this out. Between 2 to 4 subject filters is the sweet spot. Once you add more subject filters beyond that, Libby's going to be like, there's not a book that exists that's 7 genres at once or subjects at once. So 2 to 4, generally where you want to stay. I have one more piece of criteria to meet, and that is a new release. So I'm going to go back to refine. And I'm going to sort this list. I'm going to sort by release date or date added. Or no, I will do release date. Date added will be the library purchasing it and adding the collection. Release date will be when that book was released. So now I'm seeing the newest books up at the top. And then as I make my way down, they're going to get older and older. So we started this tip out with over 81,000 books, and we've narrowed it down to 222 by setting preferences and refining. So again, preferences stick and stay, they're saved. Refining is temporary. It's going to revert back to the default after you are done. So that was tip number 2. I'm now going to move into tip number 3, which is all about tags. Tags are my absolute favorite feature of Libby, very type A, so I like to stay organized. And tags are a way that you can keep and make lists in the Libby app. This is one of the differences between the OverDrive app and the Libby app. So in OverDrive, you have a wish list and you have a history. But in Libby, you can create as many tags as you'd like, and you can name them whatever you'd like. So you can get really creative with it. One of the unique ways that I use my tags is to gather ideas for gift giving. My father-in-law is an extremely avid reader. Books are pretty much the only gift that we give him that doesn't collect dust in a closet. And so I'm constantly challenged with having to find books to get him over the holidays. So what I started doing is throughout the year, when I'm searching for my own books in the Libby app and I come across a history book that I think he's going to love, I'll tag it with his own tag that I've created. And then when the holidays roll around, I can open that tag up at the bookstore and I already have a list made of all the books that he is going to enjoy. So it makes it so much easier and faster. And again, I just use that as an example to show you, you can use tags in any way you want. You're not limited to what we want you to use them for. So let's go ahead. We're going to talk about how to create a tag. We'll talk about where you can find those lists in Libby. And then I'll show you how you can export those lists out of the app. If you wanted to share them with a friend or print out a physical copy of that list, you can do that as well. So let's say we are scrolling through this list here, and I come across the Apollo murders, and this looks pretty good, but maybe not fitting exactly for the road trip that my mom and I are going in. Maybe it's a little too creepy for my mom. What I'm going to do is tap on tag. So this is going to allow me to add it to a list. I can create a new tag, or I can tap on any of my existing tags here to add it to one of those lists. Regular tags are tags that you create to stay organized. So these are your own tags. They don't have special abilities. They're just to stay organized. Smart tags, on the other hand, are tags that Libby creates. And there are 2 here that you can see. There is the borrowed smart tag. This is a tag that automatically attaches to books that you have borrowed in the Libby app. You can delete this tag if you do not want Libby auto tagging your books. We saw someone didn't want their timeline, and how to turn that off. So I'll also show you how to delete your tags, but this does come in handy. I'll show you why. And then the last one here is the notify me tag. This is specific to magazines currently. And what it does is the very first time you place or you borrow a magazine, Libby will prompt you to create a notify me tag. And once you create your notify me tag, you can add all of your favorite magazines to the tag, and Libby will start alerting you when new issues are added. So if you were in Getting Started, you saw I had one of those notifications letting me know I had a new issue of Rolling Stone come through. So that is a nice handy tag as well. So smart tags have special abilities, and then regular tags are just for organization's sake. I'm going to create a new tag here. I'm going to tap on new tag. And we can give this tag a name. We could give it a description as well. Let's say I'm going to name this tag Creepy Books. So when I'm in the mood for a spook, I'll pop into that Creepy Books tag and pick a book from that list. I don't really need a description, so I'm just going to tap on go. And now we see that that tag has popped up next to the jacket cover. Now, this is one of the reasons I love tags so much, and that's because if I'm scrolling down this list and I come across Velvet Was the Night, I can see that that has my borrowed smart tag. I've borrowed this book before in Libby. I've read this book before, and I didn't need to remember the jacket cover or the title. Even if I read this, 3 years ago and totally forgot, I have that indicator letting me know, and I'm not going to have to waste any time reading or playing the sample. I'm going to skip right over it. Now I come across In the Garden of Spite. I see that's on my to be read tag. So I expressed interest in this earlier. I came across it as I'm looking for that book for my mom and I. So I'm just going to borrow it. I'm not going to waste my time and keep looking, since I see that I already have a book of interest to me. So that is how you can create tags, and then what they look like when you're looking at search results or browsing. Now I'm going to go over to the shelf. So remember, that's where our loans and holds live. That's also where our tag lists live. So I'm going to tap on tags here. And you'll see here's my wish list with 43 titles. Here's that Creepy Books list I just made with the title I added to it. Let's go ahead and tap into my wish list, since we have a big list there. And now I can see all of those books that I've added to my wish list. Now there's an important icon over on this right-hand side. You'll see the library card with the plus sign or the calendar with the clock. This icon means there's currently a waiting list. This one means it's available to borrow now. It doesn't matter which of these icons you tap on. You can tap on the icon next to the jacket cover, and you can not only place the hold or borrow it directly from the screen. This is super important for you in Massachusetts. Down at the bottom, you'll see all of your libraries listed out, and you can compare wait lists or see availability. So here I see one demo library doesn't own the book at all, and there's about a 2-week wait at my other demo library. Again, you're going to have 8 digital collections if you add all of those. So you can really benefit from comparing the wait lists across all of your libraries. And you'll do that with either of these icons here. These icons show up when you're searching, when you're browsing, and when you are in a tagged list. So There's lots of different places that you'll find this icon to compare across all your libraries. I'm going to come up now to actions. That's in the top right-hand corner here. If you want to delete your borrowed smart tag, this is how you're going to do it. You'll pop into that smart tab, tap actions, and then delete tag, and Libby will no longer automatically tag books that you borrow. You could also rename a tag if you know your thumb slipped while you were creating it, or you can export your tag. This is going to take your tag list out of the Libby app so you can share it. I'm going to tap on export tag. We have 3 options to choose from depending on what you want to do with it. Spreadsheet is if you want to use it offline. Table is going to be online. You want to export it to a web page, for example. I'm just going to show you that one here as the example. Once you choose how you'd like to export, you'll have the data export page. And here you need to find the share button. Now, I want to note that this share icon is going to change location depending on what web browser you're using. So I'm on an iPad. This is opening up in Safari, so it's up at the top. If you're on Google Chrome or Internet Explorer, etc., then your share button might be in a different place, but you're just looking for the box with that arrow. And once you tap on share, you can send it in a text message, you can send your list in an email, or if you scroll down just a bit here, you'll also have the option to print as well if you want a physical copy. So that is how you can export your tag out of the Libby app. And that wraps up tip number 3, how to tag books in Libby and what you can do with those tags. I could truly talk about tags all day, but I'll go ahead and stop there and get into our 4th and final tip of the day, which is making notes and highlights in an ebook. This is really great for book clubbers. And so I'm going to, from my shelf, open up my copy of Pride and Prejudice here. You can make a highlight on a single word, a full paragraph, a full page if you wanted to. But what you need to do is start at the very beginning of the passage that you'd like to highlight. So I'm going to start on the word what. I'm moving my mouse slightly to the left just so you can see I'm using my finger here to hold the word what. I'm holding my finger on the screen. I'm not tapping. That's going to turn the page. So as soon as my finger makes contact, I'm leaving it there. And then I'm dragging it across the screen until the full passage that I want turns blue. And then that's when I'm going to lift my finger up. And as soon as I lift my finger up, this menu down here pops up. We can choose some different colors for highlighting if you like to stay organized like me. I'll choose green. And then now that my highlight is in place, I'm going to tap on the highlight to add a note to it. So I have written full paragraphs here. I'm just going to do a quick, this is a note for the sake of demonstration. And now that I've made my note, I'm going to just tap below that menu to drop it off the screen. Now let's page forward. And let's say I want to reference a note that I made earlier in the book. What I'm going to do is tap on the center of the screen to make my menus reappear. And then there's 3 bookmarks sitting in a row right here in the top right-hand corner. That is the icon that you're going to use to find your notes and highlights in an ebook. So here they're all listed out. I want to reference this note here, this highlight about Mr. Bingley. So I'm going to tap on it. And it's actually on the next page. It's because I switched the font size. Libby just was a page off. So if you ever tap on a highlight and it's not on the page that it took you to, go back a page or forward a page and you'll find it. So here's that highlight. To see the note, I'm going to tap on the highlight and that note drops down. Now, sometimes you are going to make your notes and highlights in a book, and then the book returns on its due date and there's a waiting list. So you aren't going to be able to open that book up and look at your notes and highlights like I'm doing right now. There are two ways that you can find your notes and highlights, even if the title has returned to the library. So I want to show you how to do that as well. I'm going to leave this book here. I'm going to tap in the center and tap on back. And what you're going to do when you want to find your notes and highlights of a book that's back at the library is to go to its details page. And the easiest way to do that is to search for it and tap on the jacket cover. So I'm going to tap on search. I'm looking for something specific. I know what the book is called. So I'm going to type in the guest list and tap on search. Here's another reason I like that smart tag. I know this is the book that I'm looking for because I see I've borrowed it before. I'm going to tap on the jacket cover here. On the details page of a book that you've borrowed in the past, you'll have a reading journey. That's going to show you all of the actions you've ever taken with the book, all of your history with the book. So I'm going to tap into my reading journey. And up at the top in the right-hand corner, that should look relatively familiar. We can tap Actions and export our reading data. So following the same steps that I showed you in tags, we can export our notes and highlights out of the Libby app for printing or emailing. If that's just a step too far, you just wanted to quickly reference a note that you made, you can scroll down on this page. And under the timeline for the title, you'll see your highlights listed out. And you can tap on each individual one here. It will show you the highlighted passage. And then right underneath, it will also show you your note in quotations. So those are the two ways that you can find notes and highlights, even if a title's returned on its due date. And that wraps up tip number 4. Our last tip of the day. I'm going to hand things back over to Joe, at least over audio. I'll be his man of white, and we'll get into some of those great questions that have been asked.
Thanks, Marissa. Yeah, now you can actually give your voice a break. But yes, I will still need your help. So the first thing I'd like to show everyone is how to cancel a hold. So if you join a wait list for a book and maybe one of your other libraries, because remember, y'all have access to 8 libraries, if you put it on hold in a couple places, maybe one came to you early, or maybe a friend surprised you with a copy of your own, go to your shelf, then tap on the filter that says holds up at the top. Then next to the book that you want to cancel the hold for, tap on manage hold. And then you can either choose to suspend or cancel. Suspend would just be if you wanted to give yourself more time, but in this case, we want to cancel it. So we'll tap on cancel hold. There will be a confirmation page for any of these, just so you don't accidentally return or cancel something you didn't mean to. We'll tap cancel hold again, and now we are off the wait list. Now we're going to flip over to our timeline. So we'll tap on the clock. And if you want to turn off the timeline, if you don't want Libby to track your books or your overall kind of history within the app, just go to the clock and then tap on Actions in the upper right-hand corner. You've seen this button a few times now. Then you would just tap on Disable Activity Recording. This is going to stop tracking from this point on. You'll probably also want to use that Remove All Activities button if you want to clear everything out that Libby has already recorded for you. Now, just a note on that. So if we're not, of course, we're not going to disable or remove because we like to use the timeline on our page. But if there was one book you just wanted off your timeline, you can actually just find it in your list, like the plot right here. And Marissa's just dragging her finger a little bit, swiping toward the left. That trash can's going to appear. Lift your finger and then tap on that trash can, and it will remove itself from your timeline. You can do that once again, however you like. And then, okay, so I actually wanted to, can we go back to the library page, Marissa?
We can. I also want to mention the swiping and trash can is also how you remove a book from a tag list. Just
absolutely
nice to know.
Yeah, great point to throw in there. You can kind of, you can do that in a lot of different places. If you use the magnifying glass a lot and you want to remove a search from the magnifying glass, same thing as well with your tags. So someone had a great question of, can we do, so like in Marissa's sort of refining tip where we were looking for that audiobook for her road trip, she was looking for mystery and historical fiction. And this person wanted to know if we could do mystery or historical fiction. So when you are doing any of those kind of like really in-depth refined searches, it is always going to be and, because that's kind of the big benefit. So if you wanted to look at, like I said, like Marissa said, those niche titles of mystery and historical fiction, or comedy horror, or whatever, it's a really great feature in that way. But there's a couple different ways you could just look at subjects. The most basic way, if we go to the library tab and tap on the subjects filter up at the top, this is going to give us a list of all of the subjects in our library. We have ours sorted alphabetically. So if you wanted to, by default, it's going to be the number of titles. So just tap on sort and then alphabetically if you'd rather have it be A to Z. So you could always scroll through here and look through that whole filter. That's pretty straightforward. But on more of the helpful end, we're actually going to go back to the library tab. So of course you could just pop into the genre or the subject you're looking for, but let's go back into available now and kind of recreate that search we were doing before. So we're gonna, Marissa's just gonna speed through and hit audiobooks for us. And she's gonna refine. We're gonna do the sort by to, sorry, release date. My brain is shutting down. I'm trying to think of all of the things we do. And then we'll start with historical fiction. So say we wanted to just look at mystery or just look at historical fiction. We did all the same steps as before. This time we're just going to do historical fiction. And so we're still at the same kind of end result. So maybe you were planning on going for a road trip and you wanted those same specific, I want an audiobook that's available now. I want to make sure it's the newest titles first. But your genre you didn't care so much about, you were just kind of flipping between a few in your mind. I would recommend starting with one. And then so you don't have to do all of those steps to fill out the search again, you can actually just tap on where it says includes historical fiction. There's a little X next to it. That'll clear out historical fiction. And then you can go back into refine and add your other subject. So this time, if we wanted to look at just mystery that fit our other criteria, this is a great way to kind of have that and that you were looking for. So I believe your follow-up example was romance or business instead of romance and business. That would kind of be your way of doing it. Still kind of keeping separate search results. They're not going to show up side by side because Libby's ability is and. But if you still wanted all of those qualifiers beforehand, like we have with audiobooks available now, sorted by most recently released, you can just change out that little bit by hitting the X next to the subject and popping in a new one. And then the last question we got was about, of course, copying a highlighted passage. You can't so much highlight directly within the book to copy and paste somewhere else, but like Marissa just showed us, you can export your notes and highlights to use that. Like if you were a student writing a paper and you highlighted a section of text and you wanted to paste it into your paper, you could do that from the export. All right, so if you still have questions, please feel free to send those through now. While you're typing out your questions, just want to give everyone the reminder of where you can find our tech support team anytime, any day of the week, 24/7. Just go to the menu in the center of your navigation bar. Then underneath help and support down at the bottom, tap on get some help. And then you'll go up to that how can we help search bar. Search for whatever you're looking for. Marissa gave us a lot of great info on tags. Maybe you had an additional tags question, so we'll just search for that. When we do, we'll get some articles that pop up. You can tap into one that you think matches what you're looking for. But if they don't seem like they match what you're looking for, they seem too basic, you don't even dive into one of them, you can tap right out here, ask our support team, and then this will prompt you to send an email. First, you'll have to pick if you were having a problem, a question, or if you have an idea for the app for the future. So I know Marissa mentioned that, but that's my hill to die on. Just wanted to quick remind everyone where you can get your questions answered. If someone highlights and exports, is a bibliography reference available? So you would still just follow any of your typical bibliography steps. We don't manufacture one for you. The same way as if you picked up a physical book off the library shelf, there isn't like a handy bibliography sitting inside of it. So there are specific guidelines available online. If you are referencing ebooks and audiobook, well, maybe not audiobooks, but if you are referencing a passage from an ebook, they do have the steps available on a lot of different typical reference sites for how you should cite that source.
That is a brilliant question, though, and an amazing recommendation. And so I would, if I heard someone ask that on the bookmobile, I'd be pointing them right here to I have an idea, so they could submit the suggestion of adding a bibliography feature for students reading for school and things like that. So I recommend going in here and passing that along to the developers.
Definitely. Gotta love the idea box. So we'll actually even go back a step in the menu. We'll go back a couple steps, but if you aren't looking for something, if you're just looking to make a suggestion like that one, you're still going to go in to get some help. But instead of using that search bar up at the top, if you go under common solutions, there's actually the suggestion box right there. So if you tap on where it says suggestion box, that's where you could type in. I think it would be great that whenever you export a note and highlight, you're automatically given a citation for that. So great place to do that. It will get sent off to our developers and they will, of course, make a note of it. If you think it'd be helpful, it means someone else would also find it helpful. So submit that through. Let's see. So it looks like our questions are slowing down. I think we have everything answered as of right now. So I'm just going to flip us over to our thank you screen here. So thank you all so much for joining us today for our Learning Libby with the Experts webinar. We were so excited to get to meet with all of you today and share all about the library reading app Libby. We hope you found something helpful out of today's info. Remember, if you have any questions, you can always reach our tech support team directly from the menu. Or of course, if you'd like to visit our Libby help site, you can go to help.libbyapp.com. Tomorrow morning around this time, you'll get an email from Zoom that includes a link to the full recording of this webinar. You can reference it as many times as you like. It expires after 6 months, but you can download it if you'd like to keep it permanently. You're also more than welcome to share this video link with family and friends. So if you think they'd like to get started with Libby, we're happy to help them as well. Let's see, other notes. Fill out the survey for us. Let us know what you thought and if you have any suggestions for the future. Otherwise, thank you all so much for joining us today. We appreciate your kind words. And of course, happy reading.
Happy reading.